The twin sons of Urith shone brightly above the grand palace. It was the day of the royal bonding ceremony, a day of celebration and hope. Flags of every color waved in the air, and the great hall buzzed with voices from dozens of alien worlds. Royals, warriors, and scholars had come to choose a mate from the royal bloodline. Princess Lyra stood at the edge of the hall, dressed in a soft blue gown. Her silver hair glowed under the crystal lights, and her violet eyes watched the crowd with quiet sadness. She was beautiful and graceful. She stood alone. No one approached her. No one bowed. No one offered their hand. Unlike her sisters, Lyra could not form a psychic bond. The Uranians were a proud race. To them, the psychic bond was sacred, connected to souls for life. It allowed partners to feel each other's thoughts, pain, and joy. Without the bond, a pairing was seen as empty. Lyra had been born with a damaged neural node. Her mind could not send or receive psychic waves. She was called broken behind her back. No one said it to her face, but she heard the whispers. Every year, she watched as suitors chose her sisters while she remained standing in silence. This year, she had almost refused to come, but duty brought her here once more. The grand hall's floor shimmered like water. At the center stood her mother, the Empress of Yurth, tall and proud. Beside her, the royal daughters waited in a line. One by one, noble suitors came forward and knelt before them. Lyra stood last in the line. The first daughter, Princess Yulia, was chosen by a noble warrior from the fire world of Kren. The bond sparked between them instantly, glowing gold. The crowd cheered. The second daughter, Princess Valera, was chosen by a starship commander. Their bond lit up in soft green light. More cheers. The third and fourth daughters were chosen, too. Every time the bond formed, light and color surrounded them. It was like magic. But when no one stepped forward for Lyra, the cheers faded. A long silence followed. Her hands clenched quietly at her sides. Her smile was small, forced. Her sisters looked at her with pity, but said nothing. Then footsteps echoed on the marble floor. A human man stepped forward. He wore a simple, dark uniform with the Earth Federation badge. His skin was pale, his eyes a warm brown. He looked out, of place among the shining robes and crystal armor of the other guests. Still, he walked with calm confidence. He bowed before the Empress. "Greetings, Your Majesty. I am Thomas Reeve. I come from Earth as part of the cultural exchange." The Empress gave a polite nod. "Welcome, human. Do you also seek a bond?" "I do," he said. The crowd whispered. "Human seeking a Uranian bond. Strange." The Empress raised her hand, then choose. Thomas turned and walked past the daughters one by one. He paused briefly in front of each one, giving a small respectful bow. When he reached Princess Lyra, he stopped. Lyra blinked in surprise. No one ever stopped at her. Thomas looked into her eyes. She felt like he was really seeing her, not her title, not her weakness, but her. He smiled gently, and then he said, "Will you bond with me?" Gasps echoed across the hall. The Empress's eyes narrowed. Lyra's sisters looked shocked. Lyra stepped back. You ask me?" Thomas nodded. "Yes, but I cannot form a psychic bond." "I know," he said. "That doesn't matter to me. You don't understand. I can't connect like others. I'm incomplete." Thomas's voice was kind. "On Earth, bonds are made through heart, not mind. We love with emotion, with trust, with time. I don't need psychic power to know you are worth choosing." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. No one had ever spoken to her like that. The Empress spoke, her voice cold. "You would take my daughter in pity, human." Thomas stood straight. "No, Majesty, this is not pity. This is choice. I choose her." The hall was silent again. Then soft murmurs began, confused, surprised, some even angry. Lyra looked down, heart racing. Could she trust him? Was he mocking her like others had before? But something in his eyes felt honest. Warm. She lifted her chin. If you are serious, human, then prove it. He tilted his head. How? There is a trial. The trial of fire and frost. It is an ancient test. Of bonding, not psychic, but emotional. If you pass, I will accept. The Empress raised an eyebrow. That trial is dangerous. Many fail. Even bonded pairs fall apart under the pressure. Thomas didn't hesitate. Then let's go. Lyra almost smiled. The Empress gave a long pause, then nodded slowly. Very well, you may take the trial, but be warned, failure means the bond is denied forever. Thomas looked at Lyra and said, then I won't fail. Later that night, in a quiet garden beneath 2 moons, Lyra sat beside Thomas before their journey. You really mean to do this? She asked. He looked up at the stars. I didn't come here to find love. But then I saw you, and I felt like I had to step forward. Why? Because everyone else saw what you lack. I saw what you are. Lyra looked away. You might regret it. Thomas smiled. Maybe, but maybe not. Sometimes the best things begin with a risk. Turn to him slowly, your strange human, and your amazing princess. For the first time in many years, Lyra felt a spark not in her mind, but in her heart. She didn't know if this would work, but for once, she had hope. The twin moons of Yerathos still hung in the sky as Princess Lyra and Thomas Reeves stood at the edge of the glowing forest. Before them lay the path to the trial of fire and frost, an ancient journey meant only for those who wished to prove the UHD strength of their bond. Behind them, 2 royal guards waited beside a transport ship. They had strict orders: drop the pair off and return in 7 days. No rescue, no help. If Lyra and Thomas did not return by the end of the 7th day, they would be declared failed or dead. The guards gave them a cold look, especially Thomas. Human, one said, turn back now. You're not one of us. You won't last 1 day in the wild. Thomas only nodded and smiled. Thanks for the warning. Then he turned toward the path. Lyra followed without a word, her long coat swaying in the wind. Her expression was calm, but inside her chest, her heart beat fast. This was not just a physical trial. It was also emotional. 2 souls walked into the unknown, and only those who could truly trust each other would survive. They walked for hours into the forest, where trees glowed with soft blue light and strange animals whispered through the leaves. The air was cold and thick with mist. Is this the fire part or the frost part? Thomas joked, rubbing his arms. Lyra gave him a small smile. This is only the beginning. The real test comes after nightfall. By evening, they reached an open field near a steaming lake. They set up camp using basic supplies. Nothing advanced. No weapons, no machines. Only their minds, bodies, and each other, as darkness fell. The first part of the trial began. The fire came. Suddenly, red lights glowed in the distance. The ground shook. Flames rose from the trees as a lava beast crawled out from the earth. Its body was made of molten stone. Its roar shook the night air. Thomas grabbed a long branch and stood in front of Lyra. Stay behind me, he shouted. You don't have to protect me, Lyra said, but she didn't step away. The lava beast charged. Thomas dodged quickly and stabbed the branch into its eye. It let out a furious scream, but the branch broke useless. Lyra acted fast. She picked up a glowing plant and threw it at the creature. The chemical in the flower released a loud sound, confusing the beast. Now, she yelled. Thomas pushed the beast toward the lake. It slipped, roared, and then fell into the water with a huge splash. Steam exploded into the air. When it was finally over, Thomas collapsed onto the ground, breathing hard. You okay? Lyra asked. Yeah. I just fought a lava monster with a stick, he laughed. That's new for me. Lyra sat beside him. You fought to protect me. You protected me too, he said. They both looked at each other. Something unspoken passed between them, no psychic bond, but a shared feeling of trust. They slept, closed that night, beside the fire, under stars they both didn't understand. But in that quiet, something began to grow. The next day brought the frost, as they climbed higher into the crystal mountains. The temperature dropped. The wind howled. Snow began to fall. The trial was not just about monsters, it was also about pain, cold, and survival. Lyra shivered under her coat. She was weaker in the cold due to her condition, body tired quickly. Thomas noticed. We should rest. No, Lyra said through clenched teeth. We have to keep moving. You'll collapse. Can make it. Thomas stopped walking. Lyra, you don't have to prove anything. Not to me. She finally looked at him. You don't understand. I spent my whole life being seen as weak, broken. If I fall now, everyone will say I failed again. He stepped closer. You don't need to prove anything to them. You're already more than enough. You came here, you faced fire, you saved me. That's strength. Lyra blinked. Her lips trembled, not from the cold, but from emotion. No one's ever said that to me. He took her hand, and they were blind. She didn't pull away. They built a small shelter using snow and crystal branches. Inside, they huddled together for warmth. Their faces were close. Thomas could feel her breath, Lyra whispered. What if I never learned to bond the way Uranians do? Then maybe, Thomas said softly, Uranian bonding needs to change. She looked into his eyes, stunned. You would change a whole culture for me? I'd change a whole galaxy for you, he said without laughing. And in that moment, something sparked not in the mind, not in the brain, but in the space between them. A soft blue light appeared around their hands. A shimmer, a glow. Lyra gasped. That's impossible. What is it? It's the old spark. The first kind of bond. Before psychic links were common, our ancestors believed in this. Emotional energy. It hasn't been seen in centuries. Thomas smiled. Maybe it just needed the right to people. Lyra felt a tear fall from her eye. Not from sadness, but from hope. Over the next 2 days, they crossed dangerous paths. They faced storms, wild creatures, and illusions that tried to break their minds. One night, Thomas saw a vision of Earth burning, his family screaming. He panicked, fell to his knees, but Lyra held his face in her hands. This isn't real. Look at me. Look at me, I'm here. You're safe. The vision faded. Later, Lyra saw a dream where the Empress told her she was worthless. She believed it until Thomas wrapped his arms around her and whispered, You're more than enough. I believe in you. They faced the worst part of the trial together and passed every test. By the 6th day, they reached the final gate. It was a giant stone door shaped like 2 hearts crossed. Only bonded pairs could open it. Lyra placed her hand on the stone. I'm afraid, she whispered. Thomas did the same. Me too, but I'd rather be afraid with you than brave alone. The stone glowed, the gate opened, and behind it stood a tall figure, an ancient guardian of the trial. It looked at them with silver eyes. You have no psychic bond. It said no, Lyra answered, but you came together. You survived. You supported each other. Thomas added, we chose each other. The guardian paused. Then you have passed. It vanished into light. Lyra turned to Thomas, breathless. We did it. We did it, he said. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt whole, not because someone told her she was enough, but because someone truly believed it. The return to the capital city was nothing like the silence of their journey into the wild.
Oh.
As Princess Lyra and Thomas Reeve walked through the shining palace gates, everyone was watching them. Guards stood straight. Ministers whispered. And the Empress Lyra's powerful mother sat high on her crystal throne. Staring down with unreadable eyes, the two stood side by side, their clothes dusty and torn from the trial. But they stood proud. You survived, the Empress said. At last we did, Lyra replied. Thomas bowed. We faced every test and passed, yet you have no psychic bond, one royal advisor said, stepping forward. There was no glow, no mind link. 'Tis against Iranian law to bond without one. There was a glow, Lyra answered calmly. Not of the mind, but of something older, something deeper. The hall went quiet. The ancient bond, the ancient bond, the Empress whispered. Some ministers laughed. That's a story for children, said one. A myth. I saw it, Lyra said firmly. And I felt it. Thomas nodded. I may not be Uranian. I may not have mind powers. But I know when someone chooses me not because they must, but because they want to. A few heads turned at that. The Empress looked at her daughter. Is this truly your choice? Lyra stepped closer to Thomas. Yes, I choose him. It's with all that I am. The Empress was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Very well. The law says if one completes the trial, the bond must be respected. Some gasped, others frowned, but the Empress stood and raised her hand. Princess Lyra and human Thomas Reeve have passed the ancient trial of fire and frost. Their bond is accepted. There was clapping soft at first, then louder, but not everyone was pleased. Later that night, in a golden garden deep inside the palace, Thomas sat beside a glowing tree. Lyra walked over, holding 2 cups of Uranian tea. You did it, she said, handing him one. We did it, Thomas corrected. Lyra sat beside him. You know, never thought anyone would fight for me. Thomas looked at her. And they were fools. She smiled and sipped her tea. But in the shadows, someone watched them. Elsewhere in the palace, Duke Serana Noble, with strong psychic power and ambitions, stood in his private chamber, staring at a small glowing orb. Disgraceful, he muttered. A human? Bonding with a royal? His servant bowed. Shall we begin, my lord? Yes. Start spreading the message. This is an insult to our bloodline. People will follow if they believe the throne is being poisoned. The servant nodded and vanished. Saran's eyes burned with hatred. That girl was supposed to be forgotten. Now she dares to stand in the light. The next morning, as Lyra walked through the city with Thomas by her side, things felt different. Some people smiled and bowed. Others turned their backs. One old woman handed Lyra a flower and said, You're brave. But later, a merchant muttered, Why bond with a weak one and a human? Thomas heard it, but said nothing. Lyra held his hand tighter. They returned to the palace in silence. That night, someone tried to break into Thomas's room. A silent blade came through the wall. But Thomas had trained on Earth. He ducked, grabbed a metal rod, and fought the attacker off. Guards came rushing in. The attacker vanished, but left behind a symbol, the mark of Saran, the next day. The Empress called a meeting. This bond is shaking the empire, she said. Lyra stood her ground, not the bond. The fear of change is shaking it. The people are divided. Then let them see the truth. Let them hear my story. The Empress stared at her youngest daughter. You would stand before all of you. Yes, Lyra said, and tell them what this bond really means. 2 days later, a large gathering filled the circle of voices, the biggest open arena in the capital. Thousands of Uranians had gathered. Holograms showed the event across other planets. Lyra stood in the center, dressed in royal white. Thomas stood beside her in formal Earth dress. She looked at the crowd. Many were curious. Some were angry, and then she spoke. My name is Princess Lyra. All my life, I was called broken because I could not form a psychic bond. I was told I was weak, incomplete, and unworthy. The crowd murmured, I believed it. For years I believed I had no place among you, till one man, a human, looked at me and said, You are enough. She turned to Thomas. He didn't need powers to feel my heart. He didn't use MindLink to know my pain. He stood by me, protected me, respected me not because I could offer him strength, but because he saw my soul. Tears appeared in some eyes across the crowd. Lyra continued, We took the ancient trial. We passed not through force, but through trust, through care, through choice. The bond we made is real. It may not glow in the way you're used to, but it glows here. She touched her chest, in the heart. Silence followed. Then slowly, hands began to clap, one by one, then louder. Then the whole arena echoed with applause. But not everyone was pleased. Inside a dark room, Duke Saran slammed his fist into a table. "She's turning the people." His servant asked, "What should we do?" "We bring fear," Saran said. "We show the people what happens when the weak are allowed to rule." That night, explosions rocked the edge of the city. 3 government buildings were attacked. Fake messages blamed Earth. Saran spread lies, saying Thomas was a spy who had tricked the princess. People panicked. The Empress called an emergency council. Lyra and Thomas were present. "She's being targeted," one minister said. "They want war with Earth," said another. "No," the Empress said. "They want power, and they are afraid that love has more power than their minds." Lyra stepped forward. "Let me face them. Let me speak again." Thomas grabbed her hand. "Not alone," she smiled. "Never alone." They broadcast a message. "Across the stars, fear grows in darkness," Lyra said in the video. "But bonds built on trust shine brighter than any psychic link." Across Urith, the message spread. Across other worlds, too. More people began to support them. Stories of the old bonds returned, ancient books were opened again, and even those with no psychic power began to feel proud. One evening, while walking near the glowing lake where they first fought the lava beast, Lyra looked up at Thomas. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Regret what?" "Choosing me?" He pulled her close. "Not for a second." "Used to dream about being normal." He touched her cheek. "You're more than normal. You're extraordinary." The royal palace of Urith stood tall and beautiful, shining under the twin suns. But inside its walls, fear and tension grew like fire, waiting to explode. Princess Lyra sat in the council room beside Thomas Reeve. Her face was calm, but her heart beat fast. Across the table sat the Empress, royal ministers, and commanders. The recent bombings in the city had shaken everyone. No one knew who to trust anymore. A minister stood. "People are frightened. Some believe this bond between Princess Lyra and the human is causing all of this." Another added, "There are whispers of rebellion. They say the royal bloodline is weakened by this strange bond." Lyra spoke clearly. "My bond with Thomas is not the cause of fear. It is the proof of change. Those who hate us simply fear that the old ways are fading." One elder banged the table. "And what if the old ways must remain? The bond of mind has guided our people for thousands of years." Thomas raised his voice. "And how many have been left behind because of that one rule? How many were told they were not worthy because their minds worked differently?" Silence followed. The Empress sighed. "There is truth in both voices. But something worse is coming. I feel it." She was right. That night a secret message reached the palace. Duke Saran had declared rebellion. Saran stood before a large crowd in the old temple square of the outer provinces. His voice echoed through speakers. "Our traditions are under attack. The crown is being poisoned by weakness, by emotion, by outsiders." The crowd shouted in anger. Saran lifted a golden banner. "We will take back our empire from the broken." And the bonded, it gathered thousands of followers, old warriors, angry nobles, and mind-linked soldiers loyal to him. He called them the Pure-Born Alliance, and they were marching toward the capital. Back in the palace, Lyra stood at the balcony with Thomas. Below, guards trained. People ran through the streets, preparing for war. Thomas looked at her. "He wants to destroy everything just to stay in power. He never saw me as part of this world," Lyra said. "Even when I was a child, he said I should be hidden." Thomas placed a hand on hers. "You don't need to hide anymore. You're stronger than all of them." Lyra smiled weakly. "I'm scared, Tom." He held her hand tighter. "So am I, but fear means you care, and caring means we fight harder." She nodded. "And we fight." The next morning, Lyra stood in front of the city gates with Thomas at her side. Behind them were only a few hundred loyal guards, young warriors, and some citizens. In front of them, thousands of Saran's soldiers stood, armored and ready. Saran rode forward on a hover chariot, dressed in black crystal armor. "You should have stayed quiet, girl," he called out. Lyra shouted back, You fear me because I remind you of what you tried to destroy hope. Hope won't save you now." Then Sauron raised his hand. The battle began. Energy blasts flew through the air. Swords of light clashed. Cries of pain and war echoed across the city walls. Thomas fought beside Uranian guards, using earth-trained moves and raw courage. He took down 2 soldiers trying to reach Lyra. Lyra fought to not with weapons, but with her voice. She used old Uranian war chants, calming her side, giving them courage. But Sauron's forces were strong. They pushed forward fast. Then when the loyal forces were about to fall, the people arrived. Hundreds of citizens came running, carrying tools, weapons, or just fists. Farmers, teachers, even healers. People from every province. They had seen Lyra's speech. They had watched her fight for love and fairness. And now they stood with her. The battle turned. Sauron, furious, shouted, "This is madness." No, Thomas shouted back, "This is humanity and unity." He ran forward and tackled Sauron from his chariot. They rolled on the ground. Sauron punched hard with psychic force, but Thomas kept fighting, bruised and bloody. Then Lyra stepped between them. Sauron raised his hand to strike her, but paused. Lyra stared straight into his eyes. "You can kill me, but others will rise. You can burn our bond, but you cannot unmake the choice I made." For the first time, Sauron looked unsure. Then a guard struck him from behind and placed him in cuffs. The battle was over. Later that evening, the palace was filled with light again. The people cleaned the streets. Wounded were treated. Families reunited. The rebellion had ended. Just because of weapons, but because of one powerful truth. The people had chosen love over fear. Inside the palace, the Empress stood before her people. Her voice was steady. "Today our kingdom almost fell. But it was saved not by power, but by compassion, by courage, by a bond we all ignored for too long." She looked at her daughter. "Lyra, I was wrong. I once believed your value came only from tradition, but now I see you carry something far greater." She turned to Thomas. "And you. Remind us that we are more than our minds. We are our hearts." The Empress raised her hands. "From this day, all forms of bonding will be honored on Yrith. Psychic, emotional, human, or alien." The crowd cheered. Lyra stepped forward and spoke to the people. "I was once called broken, but now I am whole not because someone fixed me, but because someone saw me." She reached for Thomas's hand. "We will rebuild this world, together." That night, alone in the royal garden, Lyra and Thomas sat under the glowing tree where they had first shared tea. "So," Lyra said softly, "we almost died." "Oh, yeah," Thomas laughed. "But at least we looked good doing it." She leaned on his shoulder. "Do you think things will really change?" He nodded. "They already have. You're not just the disabled princess anymore. You're the people's princess. I'm the lucky fool who asked you a crazy question." She smiled. "The best question anyone ever asked me." "Will you bond with me?" he repeated with a grin. "I already did," she whispered. Then she kissed him. The stars above shone brighter that night as if the galaxy itself smiled back. 1 month had passed since the rebellion. The royal palace of Yrith, once filled with tension and doubt, now echoed with laughter, voices, and the light steps of builders and healers. The walls were repainted. New gardens were planted. At the heart of it all, Princess Lyra walked side by side with Thomas Reeve, no longer a stranger, but now a symbol of change. Their bond had inspired more than just one planet. Now, humans and Uranians were beginning to work together like never. Before, trade ships arrived from Earth. Schools opened where both races studied side by side. And on every corner, people whispered stories about the princess who once stood alone and the human who chose her. But peace, Lyra knew, was not something to be taken for granted. One quiet morning, Lyra and Thomas stood on the palace balcony, overlooking the rebuilding city. The golden sun bathed everything in warm light. "Look at them," Thomas said, pointing at the streets below. "Uranian kids running beside Earth kids. That didn't happen before." Lyra smiled. "And it happened because you asked one question." Thomas laughed. I had no idea how much trouble that question would bring. She playfully hit his arm. And no idea how much love, too. There was silence between them for a moment, comfortable, full of meaning. Then a servant arrived with a silver envelope. "A message from the Earth Federation," he said. Thomas opened it. His eyes widened. "They want us to visit Earth." "Speak." "At the United Planetary Assembly," U.S. Lyra asked. "They want you to share our story. To show the galaxy what bonding really means." Lyra bit her lip. "They'll judge me." "They'll listen," Thomas said. "Because you're not just a princess anymore. You're a symbol." Lyra nodded slowly. "Then let's go." 2 weeks later, the royal shuttle entered Earth's orbit. The blue planet sparkled below them, full of life and light. For Lyra, it was the first time seeing Earth in person. She pressed her face against the window wide-eyed. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Wait till you try pizza," Thomas joked. They landed in New Geneva, a shining city built beside Earth's largest spaceport. Hundreds of delegates from different planets had gathered in the assembly hall. Humans, aliens, and beings of light and stone, all united in one cause: peace between worlds. As Lyra stepped onto the grand stage beside Thomas, she felt every eye watching. She took a deep breath. "My name is Lyra of Yrith," she began. "In all my life, I was told I could never bond. That because I lacked psychic power, I lacked value." Murmurs moved through the crowd. "I believed that lie," she continued, "until one person, a human, looked past what I lacked and saw what I was." She turned to Thomas. "He didn't try to fix me. He didn't need my powers. He simply chose me." Now the room was quiet. Our bond was once called impossible. But now that bond has brought peace to a planet. It has brought understanding between two species. And maybe it can help bring unity to many more. She stepped back. The hall exploded in applause. That night, Earth's skies lit up with celebration. Lights danced across the buildings. Songs from Yrith and Earth blended together in the streets. And in the center of it all, Lyra and Thomas danced slowly under the stars. "You were incredible," Thomas whispered. "I was terrified," Lyra admitted. "That's what made it brave." She leaned her head on his chest. "Do you think others will bond like us?" "I think they already are." Weeks passed. More mixed couples came forward, human and alien, psychic and non-psychic, all forming bonds of emotion, not just mind. Yrith opened new bond schools. Earth added emotional learning to its science academies. The galaxy was changing, but peace wasn't easy. Not everyone agreed. In a distant corner of the galaxy, a council of old alien races watched the changes with doubt. The human Uranian. "Bond weakens tradition," one said. "It threatens the old balance," said another. "But it brings new hope," said a third quietly. They voted. Some chose peace. Others chose silence. But all agreed on one thing. The world was not the same anymore. Back on Yrith, the Empress grew older. Her time as ruler was nearing its end. Stood before her people and declared, "My daughter, Princess Lyra, will be the next Empress of Yrith." Gasps of joy filled the royal court. Lyra stepped forward, her hand in Thomas's. "I accept," she said, "but I will not rule alone." She turned to the council. "My bondmate Thomas Reeve of Earth will serve as my co-advisor and partner." In all things, some grumbled. Others clapped. The Empress smiled. "Then let it be written. This is the start of a new age." Under Lyra's rule, great changes came. New bond festivals celebrated all kinds of connection: mind, heart, and spirit. Interplanetary marriage laws were rewritten. A shared alliance was built between Earth and Yrith, based not just on trade, but on understanding. Children born from mixed families grew up speaking both languages. Some had powers, others didn't. All were welcomed, and somewhere in a quiet village, an old woman told her grandchildren the story of a princess who once stood alone. Until a strange man asked her a simple question. Years later, in the royal garden, Lyra and Thomas sat under the same glowing tree where their journey truly began. Their hair had grayed now. Their smiles hadn't changed. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I never said anything that day?" Thomas asked. "Every day," Lyra said softly. And I'm thankful you spoke." Thomas laughed. "All I said was, will you bond with me?" She looked at him with love in her eyes. "Yes, but no one else ever did." She leaned in and kissed him. The stars above glowed gently, witnesses to a love that had changed the galaxy. And though there was still more to build, more to learn, more to heal, one truth would always remain. Sometimes the smallest choice a question, a step, a hand offered can change everything.